Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U's Harmony, watching the blue-green moon of Kepler 442c grow larger on the main screen. His hands rested on the command chair as he studied the peaceful-looking world below. This small moon would either become the place where humans and aliens finally made peace, or it would be remembered as the spot where everything went wrong. "Captain, we're getting close to the meeting point," said Lisa Barnes from her navigation station. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet, and Morrison trusted her completely. Her fingers moved across the controls as she adjusted their approach. "Angle," Morrison nodded and looked around his bridge. These people had been with him for 3 years, and he knew each one of them like family. Ryan Clark sat at the communications console, his headset on as he monitored all the radio channels. Amanda Ross stood near the security station, her sharp eyes watching everything. These were good people, and he hoped they would all make it home safely. "Any word from the aliens yet?" Morrison asked. "The Zephyrians are keeping quiet, sir," Ryan replied. "But their ships are already here. I count at least 50 vessels in orbit around the moon." Morrison felt a small chill run down his spine. 50 ships was a lot of firepower. He reminded himself that this was supposed to be a peace meeting, not a battle. The Zephyrians had agreed to these talks, and they seemed to want peace as much as humans did. "Captain, I'm getting a message from Earth Command," Ryan said, pressing his headset closer to his ear. "Admiral Hayes wants to speak with you." "Put him through." The main screen changed to show Admiral Kevin Hayes sitting in his command center back on Earth. The older man looked tired, but his eyes were alert. Behind him, Morrison could see other officers working at their stations. "Jake, how are things?" "Looking out there?" Hayes asked. "Everything seems normal, sir. The Zephyrians are here as planned, and our own fleet is standing by just outside the system." Hayes nodded. "Good. Remember, this meeting is our best chance to avoid a war. The politicians back home are getting nervous about all the fighting. In the Centauri sector, we need this to work." Morrison understood. For months, human mining ships and Zephyrian patrol vessels had been having small fights over who could mine asteroids in the Centauri system. No one had been killed yet, but it was only a matter of time. Both sides wanted the valuable metals in those asteroids, and neither side wanted to back down. "We'll do our best, sir," Morrison said. "I know you will. Hayes out." The screen went back to showing the moon. Morrison could see the Zephyrian ships more clearly now. They were strange-looking vessels, built for creatures that lived in water. The ships had smooth, curved hulls that looked almost alive. Some of them were huge, easily twice the size of the Harmony. "Captain Ambassador Rodriguez is on her way to the bridge," Amanda said. A few minutes later, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stepped onto the bridge. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Morrison knew she was one of the toughest negotiators in the diplomatic corps. She had helped end 3 different conflicts in the past 10 years. "Captain Morrison, are we ready?" she asked. "Yes." We should reach the meeting point in about 30 minutes. Rodriguez nodded and moved to stand beside him. "I've been studying the Zephyrian culture for months, but I'm still nervous. These people are so different from us. They live underwater. They think in ways we don't understand, and their language is incredibly complex." "But they agreed to meet with us," Morrison pointed out. "That has to mean something. I hope so." "The reports say their leader, Prime Minister Veltar, is a reasonable person. He's been in power for over 20 years, and he's always tried to avoid conflicts with other species. But there are some younger Zephyrians who think differently." Morrison had read the same reports. There was a group of young Zephyrian military officers who believed their people should expand their territory and drive out all other species. Their leader was a commander named Kethra, and he had been very vocal about his dislike of humans. "Ma'am, do you think this Commander Kethra will be at the meeting?" Morrison asked at Rodriguez's side. "Probably. From what I understand, he's been put in charge of security for the Zephyrian delegation. Prime Minister Veltar wants to keep an eye on him. That could be a problem. Yes, it could. But we have to try. The alternative is a war that could spread across half the galaxy." Morrison knew she was right. The Zephyrians had allies, and so did humans. If fighting broke out, it wouldn't stay limited to just two species. Dozens of worlds could be dragged into the conflict. "Captain, we're being hailed by the Zephyrian flagship," Ryan announced. "Put it through." The main screen showed the interior of a Zephyrian ship. Everything was filled with water, and Morrison could see several alien figures swimming in the blue-green liquid. The Zephyrians themselves were about the size of humans, but they had gills instead of lungs and skin that looked almost like fish scales. Their leader floated in the center of the screen. "Human vessel, this is Prime Minister Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said. His voice sounded strange through the water, but the universal translator made his words clear. "Welcome to Kepler 442c. We are pleased that you have come to discuss peace between our peoples." Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward. "Prime Minister Veltar, I am Ambassador Elena Rodriguez. On behalf of the human government, I thank you for agreeing to these talks. We hope they will lead to a lasting peace. As do we, Ambassador. Please follow our escort ships to the meeting facility. It has been specially constructed to accommodate both of our species. We look forward to beginning our discussions," Rodriguez replied. The screen went dark, and Morrison felt some of his tension ease. Prime Minister Veltar seemed genuinely interested in making peace. Maybe this would work after all. "Captain, 3 Zephyrian ships are moving to escort us," Lisa reported. "Follow their lead," Morrison ordered. The Harmony moved slowly toward the moon, surrounded by the graceful alien vessels. Morrison watched as they approached a large structure built on the moon's surface. It looked like a giant bubble, half filled with water for the Zephyrians and half filled with air for the humans. "Impressive," Rodriguez said. "They've really thought this through." "Captain, I'm detecting some unusual activity among the Zephyrian fleet," Amanda said, studying her security. "Screens. Several ships are running active scans on us." Morrison frowned. "Normal precautions or something else?" "Hard to say, sir. But they're being very thorough. Keep monitoring them. Let me know if anything changes." As the Harmony settled into orbit around the moon, Morrison felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The fate of billions of people might depend on what happened in the next few days. He looked at his crew, all of them focused on their duties, and felt a surge of pride. Whatever happened, they would face it together. "Ambassador, the shuttle is ready when you are," Morrison said. Rodriguez nodded. "Thank you, Captain. Wish me luck." "You've got this, ma'am. Just remember, we'll be watching from up here." As the ambassador left the bridge, Morrison settled back into his command chair. The easy part was over. Now came the real challenge, trying to make peace between two species that had been moving toward war for months. He just hoped that cooler heads would prevail and that both sides really wanted to find a solution. The Harmony continued its slow orbit around the moon, while far away, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited in the darkness of space, ready to respond if things went wrong. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood in the strange meeting room, half of it filled with water and half with air. She watched the Zephyrian delegates swimming gracefully through their section while she and her team stood on the dry platform. The second day of talks had been going better than expected, and she was starting to feel hopeful about reaching a peace agreement. Prime Minister Veltar floated near the glass barrier that separated the two sections. His large, dark eyes showed intelligence and what Rodriguez hoped was genuine interest in making peace. Next to him swam several other Zephyrian officials, their scaled skin shimmering under the artificial lights. "Ambassador Rodriguez," Veltar said through the water, his voice clear thanks to the translation system, "your proposal for shared mining operations is interesting. We believe there may be room for compromise," Rodriguez smiled. "That's wonderful news, Prime Minister. Our people have much to offer each other if we can work together instead of fighting." But not everyone in the room seemed happy with the progress. Commander Kethra, the young Zephyrian military officer, floated at the back of the alien group. His movements were sharp and aggressive, and Rodriguez had noticed him making angry gestures whenever the humans spoke about mining rights. "Prime Minister," Kethra interrupted, swimming forward, "we should not be so quick to trust these humans. They have already shown they will take whatever they want by force. Valtar's expression showed annoyance. Commander, we have discussed this. The incidents in the Centauri sector were misunderstandings. Both sides made mistakes. Mistakes? Kethra's voice rose. They attacked our patrol ships. Rodriguez stepped forward. Commander, I understand your concerns, but our ships were defending themselves. Your patrols were threatening our mining vessels. We were protecting our territory. Enough, Veltar commanded. We are here to find solutions, not to rehash old arguments. Rodriguez could see the tension between the two Zephyrians. She had read in the briefing files that there was a growing split in Zephyrian society between those who wanted peace and those who wanted to expand their territory through force. Commander Kethra clearly belonged to the second group. Perhaps, Rodriguez said carefully, we could take a break and continue with the cultural exchange ceremony we had planned. It might help us understand each other better. Veltar nodded. An excellent idea. Commander Kethra, you will observe proper protocol during the ceremony. The young commander's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Of course, Prime Minister. Rodriguez felt nervous as the ceremony began. The cultural exchange was meant to show respect between the two species, but she knew how easy it was to make mistakes when dealing with alien customs. She had spent weeks studying Zephyrian culture, but there was still so much she didn't understand. The ceremony started with the Zephyrians performing a graceful swimming dance that told the story of their people's journey to the stars. Rodriguez watched in fascination as the aliens moved through the water like living poetry, their movements precise and beautiful. When it was the humans' turn, Rodriguez had her team perform a traditional Earth ceremony that honored the meeting of two peoples. The Zephyrians seemed impressed by the human display, and Rodriguez began to relax. Now, Veltar said, we will exchange the traditional greeting of friendship between our peoples. Rodriguez had practiced this moment many times. According to her cultural briefing, the Zephyrian greeting involved a specific hand gesture that showed respect and peaceful intentions. She had been told it was similar to placing one's hand over their heart, but with the fingers positioned in a particular way. Taking a deep breath, Rodriguez stepped forward and made the gesture she had learned. She pressed her hand to her chest, with her fingers spread wide, then moved it forward toward the Zephyrians. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Every Zephyrian in the water suddenly stopped moving. Their eyes went wide with shock and horror. Commander Kethra let out what sounded like a scream of rage. How dare you? Kethra shouted, his voice full of fury. This is an insult beyond measure. Rodriguez felt her heart sink. Something had gone terribly wrong. I don't understand. What did I do? Prime Minister Veltar looked stricken. Ambassador, that gesture ... It is not a greeting of friendship. In our culture, it means you consider us to be lower than animals? It is one of the worst insults possible. No, Rodriguez said desperately. That's not what I meant at all. There must be a mistake in the translation of our cultural files. But the damage was already done. The other Zephyrians in the room were making angry sounds, and Commander Kethra was swimming back and forth in rage. This proves what I've been saying, Kethra declared. The humans have no respect for us. They come here pretending to want peace, but they insult us to our faces. Commander, please, Veltar said, but Rodriguez could see that even the Prime Minister was shaken. I believe the ambassador made an honest mistake. Mistake? Kethra's voice was full of disbelief. They study our culture for months, and then they make this mistake. No, this was deliberate. They are showing us what they really think of our people. Rodriguez felt panic rising in her chest. Prime Minister, I swear to you, this was not intentional. Someone made an error in translating your cultural practices. I would never deliberately insult your people. But even as she spoke, she could see doubt in Veltar's eyes. The other Zephyrians were becoming more agitated by the moment, and Commander Kethra's faction was growing louder in their anger. Up in orbit, Captain Morrison was watching the situation unfold through the security cameras in the meeting facility. He could see the distress on Ambassador Rodriguez's face and the obvious anger of the Zephyrians. "This doesn't look good," he said to his bridge crew. Lieutenant Commander Paul Griffin, his tactical officer, was monitoring the Zephyrian fleet. "Captain, I'm seeing increased activity among their ships. Several vessels are powering up weapons systems." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "Are they targeting us?" "Not yet, sir, but they're definitely getting ready for something." On the bridge, Communications Officer Ryan Clark was trying to maintain contact with the meeting facility. "Captain, I'm having trouble getting through to the ambassador. There's a lot of interference." Morrison made a decision. "Amanda, get a security team ready. If things go bad down there, we might need to extract our people quickly." "Security Chief." Amanda Ross nodded and left the bridge. Morrison continued watching the screens, hoping that somehow the situation could be salvaged. Back in the meeting facility, Commander Kethra was addressing his fellow Zephyrians. "You see? This is how humans truly view us. They come here with false promises of peace, but they cannot even hide their contempt for our people." "Commander," Veltar said firmly, "you will not use this incident to push your agenda. I still believe the ambassador made an honest mistake." "Then you are a fool, Prime Minister," Kethra snapped. "And your foolishness will be the death of our people." The tension in the room was becoming unbearable. Rodriguez tried once more to explain. "Please, all of you, listen to me. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. Our cultural experts made an error in translating your customs. I meant no disrespect, but her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The Zephyrians were talking among themselves in their own language, and Rodriguez could hear the anger in their voices even without understanding the words. "Commander." Kethra suddenly swam toward the surface of the water section and activated a communication device. "This is Commander Kethra to all Zephyrian vessels. The humans have shown their true nature. Prepare for defensive action." "Commander, no," Veltar shouted. "You do not have the authority to give such orders. I have the authority to protect our people from insult and aggression." Kethra replied. Up in orbit, Morrison watched in horror as the Zephyrian fleet began moving into attack formations. "Paul, what's happening out there?" "The Zephyrian ships are repositioning, sir. They're taking up tactical positions around our ship." Morrison knew he had to act. "Ryan, send a message to Earth Command. Tell Admiral Hayes that the situation is deteriorating rapidly." "Yes, sir." But before Ryan could send the message, alarms began sounding throughout the Harmony. A bright flash appeared on the main screen as a Zephyrian weapon fired across their bow. "Captain," Paul shouted, "the Zephyrians have fired on us." Morrison felt his blood run cold. The warning shot had been intended to intimidate them, but something had gone wrong. The plasma blast struck the Harmony's main communications array, sending sparks flying across the bridge. "Damage report." Morrison ordered. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, we've lost our main communications array. The blast damaged our primary transmitter." Morrison realized with growing horror that they were now cut off from Earth Command. Without communications, Admiral Hayes would have no way of knowing what was happening. And if the automated distress beacon had activated. Ryan, did our emergency beacon go off? Ryan's face was pale. "Yes, sir. The system activated automatically when we took damage. The distress signal is broadcasting on all frequencies." Morrison closed his eyes. The distress signal would tell Admiral Hayes and the entire human fleet that the Harmony was under attack. Without any way to explain what had really happened, they would assume the worst: the diplomatic mission. Admiral Kevin Hayes stood in the command center on Earth, staring at the red warning lights flashing across his screens. The emergency signal from the Harmony had just reached him, and his worst fears were coming true. The diplomatic mission was under attack. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from Captain Morrison's ship," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. "The message indicates they're taking enemy fire." Hayes felt his jaw tighten. He had hoped this peace meeting would work, but deep down he had known it might go wrong. The Zephyrians had been getting more aggressive lately, and some of their military leaders had been talking about pushing humans out of the disputed territories. "Have we heard anything from Ambassador Rodriguez?" Hayes asked. No, sir. We've lost all contact with the Harmony. Their main communications array appears to be damaged. Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the positions of all human ships. The main fleet was positioned just outside the Kepler 442c system, waiting for orders. They had enough firepower to level an entire planet, but Hayes had hoped they wouldn't need to use it. Sir, what are your orders? Asked Commander Bill Turner. His second in command, Hayes knew he had to make a decision quickly. With communications down, he had no way to know what was really happening at the meeting site. The distress signal could mean anything from a small accident to a full-scale attack. But he couldn't take any chances with the lives of his people. Signal the fleet, Hayes ordered. All ships are to advance to battle stations and prepare for combat operations. We're going in, yes, sir. As the orders went out, Hayes felt the weight of what he was doing. He was potentially starting a war that could spread across the galaxy. But if the Zephyrians had attacked the Harmony, he couldn't leave Morrison and his crew to die. Back at Kepler 442c, Captain Morrison was trying to regain control of his ship. The bridge was filled with smoke from the damaged systems, and his crew was working frantically to repair the communications array. Kate, how long until we can talk to Earth Command? Morrison asked through the intercom. At least 2 hours, Captain, came the reply from engineering. The blast fried most of our primary circuits. We're having to rebuild everything from scratch. Morrison cursed under his breath. 2 hours was too long. By then, Admiral Hayes would have already made his decision about what to do. Without being able to explain what had really happened, Hayes would assume the worst. Captain, the Zephyrian ships are moving into attack formation around us, reported Paul Griffin from the tactical station. They're not firing yet, but they're definitely getting ready for battle. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships were arranged in a perfect circle around the Harmony, their weapons powered up and ready. It looked like they were preparing to destroy his ship, but something was holding them back. Why aren't they firing? Morrison wondered aloud. Maybe they're waiting for orders, suggested Lisa Barnes from the navigation station. That commander. Kethra seemed pretty angry, but he might not have the authority to start a full battle. Morrison hoped she was right. If the Zephyrians were having their own internal arguments about what to do, it might give him time to figure out a solution. Down. On the moon's surface, the situation in the meeting facility was getting worse by the minute. Ambassador Rodriguez was still trying to explain the cultural misunderstanding, but the Zephyrians were no longer listening to her. Commander Kethra was swimming back and forth in the water section, talking rapidly to his fellow officers. Rodriguez couldn't understand what he was saying, but his body language made it clear he was arguing for aggressive action. Prime Minister Veltar was trying to maintain control, but Rodriguez could see that he was losing the argument. The other Zephyrians were becoming more and more agitated, and several of them were nodding in agreement with Kethra's words. Ambassador, said Colonel Steve Martinez, the head of her security detail, we need to think about getting out of here. The situation is falling apart fast. Rodriguez shook her head. Not yet, Colonel. If we leave now, it will look like we're admitting guilt. That will make things even worse. Ma'am, with respect, I don't think things can get much worse. Rodriguez was about to reply when Commander Kethra suddenly stopped talking and swam toward the glass barrier separating the two sections. His dark eyes were filled with anger and determination. Ambassador Rodriguez, he said, his voice cold and formal, you and your people have 1 hour to leave this system. If you are still here after that time, we will consider it an act of war. Commander, you cannot make such demands, Veltar protested. I am the Prime Minister, and I have not authorized any ultimatums. The time for talk is over, Prime Minister. Kethra replied, the humans have shown their true nature. They must be dealt with before they can harm our people. Rodriguez felt desperate. Commander, please listen to me. The gesture I made was a mistake. Our cultural experts misunderstood your customs. I was trying to show respect, not insult you. Lies, Kethra snapped. You spent months studying our culture. You knew exactly what you were doing. I swear, too. You, I did not. But Kethra was no longer listening. He had already turned away and was swimming toward his communication device. Rodriguez watched in horror as he began giving orders to the Zephyrian fleet. Meanwhile, the first wave of human reinforcements was approaching the edge of the Kepler 442c system. Captain Danny Peterson commanded the lead ship, the UES Defender, and he was pushing his engines to their maximum speed. "Captain, we're picking up multiple Zephyrian ships around the diplomatic vessel," reported his tactical officer. "The Harmony appears to be surrounded." Peterson studied the tactical display. The situation looked bad. The Harmony was clearly outnumbered and outgunned. If the Zephyrians decided to attack, Morrison's ship wouldn't stand a chance. "Any word from Captain Morrison?" Peterson asked. "No, sir. We're not receiving any communications from the Harmony." Peterson made his decision. "Signal the squadron. We're going in fast and hard. Those are our people down there, and we're not leaving them behind." As the human ships accelerated toward the moon, the Zephyrian fleet detected their approach. "Commander." Kethra, who had just taken control of the Zephyrian forces, saw the incoming ships on his tactical display. "You see," he said to his officers, "the humans are bringing in warships. This proves they never intended to make peace. They were planning to attack us all along." Prime Minister Veltar was still trying to restore order. "Commander, those ships are probably just responding to the distress signal. If we explain the situation ... there is nothing to explain." Kethra interrupted. "The humans have insulted our people, and now they are bringing in their military. We will not wait for them to attack us first." Veltar realized he was losing control of the situation. The younger officers were listening to Kethra instead of him, and the mood in the fleet was turning toward war, back on the Harmony. Morrison was watching the approaching human ships on his sensors. He knew that Peterson and his squadron were coming to help, but he also knew that their arrival would make the situation even more dangerous. "Captain, the Zephyrian fleet is powering up all weapons," Paul reported. "They're taking up battle positions." Morrison felt sick. The diplomatic mission had become a military standoff, and there were now dozens of ships on both sides ready to start shooting. One wrong move by anyone could trigger a battle that would kill hundreds of people. "Sir, Captain Peterson is hailing us," Ryan said. "Put him through, but keep it on a tight beam. I don't want the Zephyrians to intercept it." Peterson's face appeared on a small screen. "Jake, what's your status? Are you under attack?" "Not yet, Danny, but it's close. There was a misunderstanding during the cultural ceremony. The Zephyrians think Ambassador Rodriguez deliberately insulted them." "Did she?" "No, it was an honest mistake. But try telling that to the Zephyrian commander who's now in charge of their fleet." Peterson's expression was grim. "What do you need?" "Used to do? Stay back for now? If you come in too fast, they might think you're attacking and start shooting." "Understood. But Jake, we've got Admiral Hayes and the entire fleet heading this way. If shooting starts..." Morrison knew what Peterson meant. Admiral Hayes was bringing the most powerful military force in human history to this system. If the Zephyrians attacked now, the response would be overwhelming. "How long until the Admiral arrives?" Morrison asked. 6 hours, maybe less." Morrison closed his eyes. 6 hours wasn't much time to solve a crisis that was getting worse by the minute. On the moon below, Ambassador Rodriguez was still trying to convince the Zephyrians that the insult had been unintentional. In space above, two fleets were facing each other with weapons ready, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Admiral Hayes was bringing enough firepower to end the Zephyrian Empire forever. The small cultural mistake that had started. This crisis was about to trigger the largest military conflict in galactic history. Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for orders that might determine the fate of both species. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but he knew he had to try something. "Paul, are our weapons online?" he asked. "Yes, sir, but we're still outnumbered 20-1. Morrison nodded. "I'm not planning to fight them. But if they think we're helpless, they might attack." Captain Morrison felt the ship shake as another Zephyrian plasma blast hit the Harmony's shields. The diplomatic vessel was not built for combat, and each hit was bringing them closer to disaster. Sparks flew from damaged control panels as his crew worked desperately to keep the ship running. "Shields down to 40%, shouted Paul Griffin from the tactical station. "We can't take much more of this." Morrison gripped his command chair as the ship rocked again. Commander Kethra had finally lost patience and ordered his ships to attack. The Zephyrian commander claimed he was defending his people from human aggression, but Morrison knew the truth. This was revenge for the cultural insult that had never been intended. "Lisa, can we break through their formation?" Morrison asked, Navigator. Lisa Barnes was studying her screens frantically. "There's a gap between their third and fourth ships, Captain. But it's narrow, and they'll try to close it as soon as we move." Morrison made his decision. He couldn't let his ship be destroyed here, and he needed to reach the human fleet that was approaching. "Do it. Get us out of here." "Kate, I need everything you can give me from the engines," Morrison called to engineering. "You've got it, Captain," came Kate Sullivan's reply. "But I can't promise how long they'll hold together." The Harmony suddenly accelerated toward the gap in the Zephyrian formation. The alien ships reacted immediately, turning to follow and firing their weapons. Bright plasma beams lit up the space around the fleeing human vessel. "They're closing the gap," Paul reported. "2 more ships moving to block us." Morrison watched the tactical display as the Zephyrian vessels tried to trap his ship. The gap was getting smaller, but they were almost through. "Come on," he whispered. The Harmony shot through the closing gap with barely meters to spare. Zephyrian ships on both sides fired at point-blank range, but most of their shots missed as the human vessel twisted and turned through their formation. "We're clear," Lisa announced, but their escape came at a cost. The ship was badly damaged, and several crew members had been injured. Security Chief Amanda Ross was in the medical bay with burns on her arms and face from an exploding console. "Captain, I'm getting a signal from Captain Peterson's squadron," Ryan said from the communications station. "Put it through." Danny Peterson's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Morrison could see the bridge of the Defender, with officers running between stations. "Jake, we saw you break free. Are you all right?" "We're damaged but alive," Morrison replied. "Danny, you need to know that the Zephyrians aren't going to listen to reason anymore. Their commander has taken control, and he wants a fight." Peterson's expression was grim. "We can see that. They're moving their entire fleet into attack positions. My tactical officer counts over 60 ships, and more are arriving." Morrison felt sick. 60 ships was a massive force, more than enough to destroy Peterson's small squadron. "Danny, you need to pull back. You don't have enough ships to fight them." "I can't do that, Jake. Admiral Hayes gave me orders to protect you and extract the ambassador." "I'm not leaving without completing the mission." Before Morrison could respond, alarms started sounding on Peterson's ship. "Contact. Multiple Zephyrian vessels approaching at high speed." Someone shouted in the background. The communication cut off as Peterson's squadron engaged the Zephyrian fleet. Morrison watched in horror as the first space battle began. The human ships were outnumbered 3-1, but they had better weapons and more experienced crews. The Defender and her sister ships formed a defensive line and began firing their long-range missiles at the approaching Zephyrians. The alien vessels responded with their plasma cannons, and space lit up with explosions and energy beams. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from Admiral Hayes," Ryan announced. Morrison knew what the Admiral would say even before the message played. Hayes' voice came through the speakers, cold and determined. "All units, this is Admiral Hayes. The diplomatic mission has failed, and our people are under attack. I am authorizing full military response. The entire fleet is moving to engage the enemy. We will not allow this attack on our people to go unanswered." Morrison closed his eyes. The Admiral was bringing the most powerful military force in human history to this system. When those ships arrived, the Zephyrians would face destruction on a scale they couldn't imagine, down on the moon's surface. Ambassador Rodriguez was trapped in the meeting facility with her security team. The Zephyrian forces had surrounded the building, and she could hear weapons fire outside. The cultural misunderstanding that had started this crisis seemed like a distant memory now. "Ambassador, we need to move," said Colonel Steve Martinez. "My men have found a way to the shuttle landing pad, but we have to go now." Rodriguez looked through the glass at the water section where Prime Minister Valtar was still floating. The Zephyrian leader looked defeated and exhausted. His efforts to maintain peace had failed, and his own military had turned against him. "Prime Minister," Rodriguez called out, "please come with us. You don't have to stay here and watch your—" "People make this mistake." Valtar swam closer to the barrier. "Ambassador, I thank you for the offer, but I cannot abandon my people. Even if they will not listen to me anymore, I am still their leader." "This war doesn't have to happen," Rodriguez pleaded. "We can still find a way to make peace." "I fear it is too late for that," Valtar replied sadly. "Commander Kethra has convinced too many of our people that humans are the enemy. The military is with him now." Rodriguez felt tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry about the gesture. I truly meant no disrespect." "I know you did not, Ambassador. But sometimes good intentions are not enough to prevent tragedy." Colonel Martinez grabbed Rodriguez's arm. "Ma'am, we have to go now. The Zephyrians are breaking through our perimeter." Rodriguez took one last look at Valtar, then turned and ran with her security team toward the exit. Behind them she could hear Zephyrian soldiers entering the facility, their weapons ready. The journey to the shuttle was a nightmare. Colonel Martinez and his men had to fight their way through Zephyrian forces that seemed to be everywhere. The aliens were not trying to kill the humans, but they were determined to capture them. "Stay low and keep moving," Martinez shouted as plasma bolts flew over their heads. They reached the shuttle pad just as a squad of Zephyrian soldiers appeared from another direction. Martinez and his men opened fire, forcing the aliens to take cover behind equipment containers. "Get the ambassador on the shuttle," Martinez ordered. "I'll hold them off." Rodriguez wanted to protest, but she knew that getting captured would only make things worse. She ran toward the shuttle while Martinez and his remaining men provided cover fire. The shuttle lifted off from the moon's surface. Rodriguez watched through the window as Martinez and two of his men were overwhelmed by Zephyrian forces. The brave soldiers had given their lives to save her, and she knew she would carry that guilt forever. In space above, the battle between Peterson's squadron and the Zephyrian fleet was reaching its climax. The human ships had fought bravely, but they were simply outnumbered. The Defender was badly damaged, with fires burning on several decks. "Captain Peterson, this is Morrison. What's your status?" Peterson's reply was interrupted by explosions in the background. "We've lost 2 ships, Jake. The Atlanta and the Phoenix are gone. We can't hold much longer." Morrison felt rage building inside him. Good people were dying because of a stupid misunderstanding that should never have led to violence. "Danny, pull back. You've done enough." "Negative, Jake. We're going to keep fighting until the fleet arrives." Morrison admired Peterson's courage, but he knew it was hopeless. The Zephyrians had too many ships, and more were arriving every minute. The small human squadron was being overwhelmed. Then something changed. Morrison's sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching from the edge of the system. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen, and it was moving fast. "Captain," Paul said in an odd voice, "you need to see this." Morrison looked at the main screen and felt his breath catch. Admiral Hayes had arrived with the entire human defense fleet. There were hundreds of ships, from massive battleships to nimble destroyers. The fleet stretched across space like a metal wall, bristling with weapons and armor. "All Zephyrian vessels," came Admiral Hayes' voice over the open communications channel. "This is Admiral Kevin Hayes of the Human Defense Fleet. You have attacked our diplomatic mission and killed our people. You have one chance to surrender peacefully. If you refuse, we will destroy your entire fleet." Commander Kethra's response was immediate and defiant. "Human Admiral, we do not fear your threats. Your people insulted us and then attacked us. We will defend ourselves." Hayes' reply was cold and final. "So be it. All ships, engage the enemy. Show them what happens when they threaten human lives." Morrison watched as the largest space battle in galactic history began. The human fleet moved forward like an unstoppable force, their weapons lighting up space with deadly fire. The Zephyrians fought back bravely, but they were facing the combined military might of the entire human species. Ships exploded and burned as the two fleets clashed. But it quickly became clear that the humans had a massive advantage in both numbers and technology. Their long-range weapons could hit targets that the Zephyrians couldn't even see. Admiral Kevin Hayes stood on the bridge of the massive UES Sovereign, watching as his fleet tore through the Zephyrian forces like a knife through paper. The alien ships that had seemed so threatening just hours ago now looked small and helpless against the overwhelming power of the human defense fleet. Status report, Hayes commanded. Fleet Admiral Nancy Brooks. His second-in-command stepped forward with a datapad. Sir, we've destroyed or disabled 60% of the Zephyrian fleet. Their formation is breaking apart, and many ships are trying to retreat, Hayes nodded grimly. The battle was going exactly as he had expected. The humans had better weapons, better armor, and better tactics. But the cost was still painful to watch. Even though they were winning, good people were dying on both sides. What about Captain Peterson's squadron? Hayes asked. The Defender is badly damaged, but still fighting. Captain Peterson refused our offer to pull back. He says he wants to finish what the Zephyrians started. Hayes understood Peterson's anger. The man had lost 2 ships and dozens of crew members in the initial fighting. But Hayes also knew that revenge was a dangerous emotion in battle. Signal Peterson to fall back and join the main formation, Hayes ordered. He's done enough damage to himself and his people. On the other side of the battle, Commander Kethra was realizing that his confidence had been terribly misplaced. The human fleet was not just larger than his own forces, it was far more advanced. Human weapons could hit targets at ranges his ships couldn't even detect, and human armor could absorb attacks that would destroy Zephyrian vessels. Commander, we've lost the Tide Runner and the Deep Current, reported one of his officers. The humans are destroying our ships faster than we can count them. Kethra watched in horror as another Zephyrian cruiser exploded under human fire. The proud vessels of his people were being torn apart by weapons they couldn't match. His dream of driving the humans out of Zephyrian space was turning into a nightmare. Sir, should we order a retreat? Asked another officer. Kethra wanted to say yes, but his pride wouldn't let him. He had started this fight by claiming the humans were weak and could be defeated. If he retreated now, he would be admitting that he had been wrong about everything. No retreat, he ordered. We fight. Until the end. But even as he spoke, Kethra could see that his fleet was falling apart. Ships were breaking formation and fleeing toward the edge of the system. The brave words about defending Zephyrian honor meant nothing when faced with the reality of human military power. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison had managed to repair enough of his ship's systems to rejoin the battle. The Harmony was not a warship, but Morrison felt he owed it to his people to help finish what the Zephyrians had started. Captain, we're getting a signal from Admiral Hayes, reported Ryan Clark. Hayes' face appeared on the main screen. Jake, good to see you're still alive. I have a special mission for you. What do you need, Admiral? Ambassador Rodriguez made it off the planet, but we still have people trapped down there. I want you to lead a rescue mission to extract any surviving humans from the surface. Morrison felt his heart race. What about Colonel Martinez and his team? Unknown. We lost contact with them during the fighting. They might be dead, they might be captured, or they might be hiding somewhere. I need you to find out. Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all exhausted and injured, but he could see the determination in their eyes. They weren't going to leave their people behind. We'll get them, Admiral. I'm sending Marine Colonel Tony Adams with a full assault team to help you. Good luck, Jake. The rescue mission to the moon's surface was unlike anything Morrison had ever attempted. His ship was still damaged, and the Zephyrian forces on the ground were well armed and angry. But Morrison knew that abandoning his people was not an option. Colonel Adams was a tough, experienced Marine who had fought in a dozen conflicts across human space. His assault team was made up of the best soldiers in the fleet, and they were equipped with the latest weapons and armor. Captain Morrison, Adams said as his team prepared to deploy, my people will handle the fighting. Your job is to get us down there and back up again in one piece. Morrison nodded. Understood, Colonel. The descent to the moon's surface was terrifying. Zephyrian anti-aircraft weapons fired at the shuttle, and Morrison had to use every trick. He knew to avoid being shot down. The shuttle shook and rolled as plasma bolts exploded around them. Hang on! Morrison shouted as he threw the shuttle into a steep dive to avoid another attack. They landed near the meeting facility where the cultural exchange had gone so wrong. The building was damaged from the fighting, and there were signs of battle everywhere. Colonel Adams and his Marines moved out immediately, their weapons ready. Spread out and search for survivors, Adams ordered. Remember, there might be friendly forces hiding in the area. The search took 2 hours, and Morrison spent every minute of it worried that they would be attacked by Zephyrian forces. But Adams and his team were professionals, and they systematically checked every building and hiding place. They found Colonel Martinez and one of his men, Sergeant Lisa Shun, hiding in a damaged storage facility. Both were wounded but alive. Martinez had been shot in the leg, and Shun had burns from a plasma explosion. Colonel Martinez! Adams called out as his team reached the hiding place. Are you all right? Martinez looked up with relief in his eyes. Never been better, Colonel. Though I have to say, your timing could have been better. Any other survivors? Adams asked. Negative. The rest of my team didn't make it. The Zephyrians weren't trying to kill us, but the fighting was intense. Adams helped Martinez to his feet. Well, you're coming home now. Captain Morrison is waiting to get us out of here. The trip back to the shuttle was tense but successful. The Zephyrian forces seemed to be pulling back, probably because their fleet in orbit was being destroyed by the human attack. Morrison got everyone safely back to the Harmony, and from there they transferred to one of the fleet medical ships. In space above, the battle was reaching its conclusion. The Zephyrian fleet had been almost completely destroyed, and the survivors were fleeing toward the edge of the system. Admiral Hayes faced a critical decision about what to do next. Admiral, Fleet Admiral Brooks reported, the Zephyrian resistance has collapsed. Commander Kethra S. flagship is trying to escape, but we can intercept it easily. Hayes studied the tactical display. The human fleet had achieved complete victory, but the cost had been significant. They had lost 12 ships and over 300 crew members. The Zephyrians had lost much more, but Hayes took no pleasure in the destruction. Let them go, Hayes decided. We've made our point. Sir? Brooks looked surprised. We came here to rescue our people and show the Zephyrians that attacking humans has consequences. We've done both. Destroying fleeing ships won't bring back our dead or make the galaxy safer. Hayes opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes, cease fire and return to defensive positions. The battle is over. Across the battlefield, human ships stopped shooting and began the grim task of searching for survivors and recovering the dead. The space around Kepler 442c was filled with debris from destroyed vessels, a monument to the cost of the cultural misunderstanding that had started the war on the moon's surface. Prime Minister Veltar emerged from the damaged meeting facility. The Zephyrian leader looked old and defeated as he surveyed the destruction around him. His efforts to make peace had failed, and his people had paid a terrible price for Commander Kethra's aggression. A few days later, as the human fleet prepared to leave the system, Admiral Hayes received an unexpected message. Prime Minister Veltar wanted to speak with him directly. Admiral Hayes, Veltar said when the communication link was established, I want to apologize for what happened here. Commander Kethra acted without my authority, and many good people died because of his mistakes. Hayes studied the alien leader. Veltar looked genuinely sorry for what had happened, and Hayes could see the pain in his large, dark eyes. Prime Minister, I appreciate your words, Hayes replied. But actions have consequences. Your people attacked our diplomatic mission and killed our citizens. That cannot be ignored. I understand, Veltar said. But I hope that someday, when emotions have cooled, our peoples can try again to find peace. Hayes was quiet for a moment. The battle had established human military superiority beyond any doubt, but it had also created new problems. The galaxy now knew that humans were not to be trifled with, but that kind of reputation could make future diplomacy more difficult. Prime Minister, Hayes finally said, if your people are truly interested in peace, they will have to prove it through their actions, not just their words. I understand, Admiral, and I hope we will have that chance. As the human defense fleet departed from Kepler 442c, Hayes reflected on what had happened. A simple cultural misunderstanding had triggered the largest military conflict in recent galactic history. The humans had won a decisive victory, but the real challenge would be building a lasting peace. Ambassador Rodriguez, recovering from her ordeal in the fleet medical bay, was already planning for the future. The cultural exchange that had gone so wrong would need to be studied and understood. Humanity could not afford to make the same mistakes again.